When was the last time a software salesperson hit you up, promising you the world, holding in their hand the easy button that if you just press, after giving them a bunch of money, will solve all of your issues in your construction company? You know that there is no easy solution to the technology challenges you face in your business. Construction is so unique. Every single project that you build is unique. Every single company is unique. And that's why technology adoption can be so challenging. Welcome to today's Construction Genius interview. My guest is Bob Armbrister. He is the president and CEO at Spark Business Works, a company that creates custom digital solutions for construction companies to aid construction businesses in their digital transformations. The thing that I really like about Bob is that he does not trumpet one solution for your technology issues. In fact, he brings a very fresh approach to figuring out how you might use technology in your company to increase productivity and profitability and all that good stuff. And in our interview, we dive into detail into practical, straightforward things you should be doing prior to even bringing in any kind of technology solution to solve your problems. You're going to find this incredibly helpful, so please make close note of the insights that he shares because they will assist you in making sure that when you are adopting technology, it actually fixes problems that you're facing and helps you to improve productivity and profitability. Thanks to Bob for coming on the show. Feel free to share this interview with other people who you think may benefit. Reach out to Bob with any questions that you may have. All the links and all that good stuff are in the show notes. And enjoy my interview with Bob. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Bob, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
You know, my favorite baseball player of all time is Barry Bonds. I don't care if he took steroids or not. Everybody knows the dude should be in the Hall of Fame. And what he was super famous for was hitting home runs. Now, your specialty is technology in the realm of construction. And your conviction is that construction companies shouldn't look to be like Barry Bonds hitting home runs, but they should be more like, let's see, who's a good singles and Pete Rose. Singles and doubles. Look, two characters right there. We hit Pete Rose and Barry Bonds in the first 30 seconds. Okay, so they should be focused on singles and doubles, not grand slams. Can you tell me a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, I'm from Pittsburgh. So the fact that you used Barry Bonds, Barry Bonds, Bobby Bonilla, those are I got cards back home with that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So the singles and doubles versus the grand slam, it's really about in construction technology, the pain that many people have had is that they've had projects fail when it comes to technology. And most of the time it's because they were trying to bite off more than they could chew, trying to save time typically. And what we've seen work is cultures that embrace change and innovation more than others. Now, I'm not saying they're like embracing a bunch of it, but cultures and companies that are more adept to change have a better odds of success. And the way that you build those types of cultures and those types of companies is by having small wins, gaining momentum. The way you do that is through singles and doubles, small projects, small initiatives. When people see things that pop up as opportunities for improvement, and then something actually happens and it gets addressed, changes the company. And I know it sounds, maybe it's just construction, but I know there's people listening that are nodding their heads because it's not easy in construction. But if you can start to show progress like that through, like we said, singles and doubles, you really start to change an organization, and then you can really start moving the needle.
If I'm looking at my construction company, I'm the president or the CEO, where should I be looking first for those singles and doubles opportunities in terms of technology adoption?
That's easy. Ask your team.
Okay.
So making sure your team is comfortable sharing. With a lot of clients of ours, we'll ask them, we'll do an exercise called the stop, start and keep, right? What are things we should stop doing? What are things we need to start doing? And what are things we got to keep doing? That'll typically expose some. And then, talk to enough people, you're going to get some trends. Most presidents and executives will just turn around in the office and ask those questions. That's a big no-no. You want to be out where the work's getting done. Most of the time, we see a lot of challenges because there's a gap between the people using the technology and the needs. And so talking to those end users is what they should be doing.
Okay, so the first stop then for the CEO should be the field and see what the guys and gals are doing out there and figure out what the needs are as far as roadblocks they're experiencing.
Yep. Assuming that your firm is doing work in the field. Yes. I mean, the people that are closest to the work, they're going to be the ones that'll share the challenges they have. You fix their challenges, your technology adoption challenges are going to go way down. When you're actually doing stuff that makes their lives easier, they're much more adept to getting on board. That's for sure.
When you're doing this process of stop, start, and keep, how do you identify an issue that could be addressed by technology as opposed to, let's say, a people issue? And the reason I ask this is because technology folks can have the idea that software is going to solve everything, but that's not always necessarily the case. So what should I be looking for when I'm doing that exercise with my team in terms of opportunities to leverage technology?
Yes, that's a great question. I think a lot of times the executive team or maybe the president kind of think technology is like this magical thing that can make problems go away when really it's behavior. We have clients that, are maybe they're struggling with some data or the ability to make decisions off of certain data, and it has nothing to do with the technology. It's that they can't get their team to use the tool. And so a lot of times it's, another exercise would be the 5 whys. Well, why is your forecast off? Well, these teams, the data is old. Okay, well, why is it old? Well, they don't go in there enough to update it. Okay, why don't they go in there enough to update it? Oh, well, because when you ask why enough times, you can typically work your way to see whether or not this is a behavior thing or if it's an actual system thing and a tool. So I think going in there with an open mind, not assuming it's a software thing or a technology thing. Most construction firms are doing things as efficient as they can with what they have. These are very intelligent companies that have been doing what they're doing for a really long time. Most of the time, they're not doing things inefficiently on purpose. So just going in there and assuming good intent of the people that put the systems in place and asking a lot of questions.
You mentioned a behavior thing and a system thing. How do you distinguish between those two in terms of the adoption of technology?
This goes back, like I said, to the user. In a software company, we use user-centered design approach to solving problems. And so speaking with the end users and understanding their needs and what they're responsible for is typically where we want to start. When you get to that point and you share with them, hey, here's the business objectives. Here's what the organization's trying to do. Here's how you're involved in that. Here's what we need from this team. When you throw that on the table and you then ask around, here's the data we need, here's the possible systems. If you do the technology last and you start with the user's needs first, 9 times out of 10, the systems that are then chosen or the technology that's chosen is going to be agreed upon by all parties because they're on the same page from the need standpoint. I don't know if that makes sense.
Well, it does. It's interesting because I think this is one of the dilemmas that construction companies have when it comes to adopting technology is obviously they have salespeople knocking on their door all day, every day saying, this is your problem. And now I have a solution. But that may not necessarily be a problem, or it may not be sufficient a problem to go through the pain and agony of adopting a new technology solution, but beginning with the users and getting their pains clearly identified. But what that takes then is it takes a degree of initiative on the part of the leadership in a construction company. And they also, it seems like they need to be kind of agnostic as they're going into those discussions about what technology they're going to use.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of times what you see is executives or leadership teams say, hey, I was at a conference. I learned about this tool. Their sales guy says, yeah, it'll connect with all of our systems we already use. It's great. And then they go, okay. And then they show that to the team and say, hey, team, I want you to sit in this demo. And basically the decision's been made versus, hey, let's sit with the team. Here's what we're trying to do. Let's map all this out. And then let's go to market and try to find a solution. We kind of call that the easy button, right? So clients typically get oversold. And then when they actually roll it out, it's like, oh, well, yeah, we integrated with your accounting system, but we didn't send job costs the way that you do job cost. It doesn't work that way. We do it the way, but we did say it integrated, and you're technically right. It did integrate, but not to the point that our teams needed to integrate. And so I think having executives ask detailed questions around, instead of just saying, does it integrate with X, Y, or Z? It's how does it integrate? Show me. Let me talk to a customer. Find a customer that does job cost our way, or material management, or tool tracking, or those unique things. And it just takes more time and diligence. But you don't have to be a tech savvy person to get it to a point where, no, I need you to explain it to me in layman's terms. I need to see it for myself.
Going back to the analogy of the singles, doubles, and home runs, how do I distinguish between what would be a single and what would be a home run? And what I mean by that is, as a problem surfaced, how do I understand which one to go after first? Because I might find multiple problems when I go into the field and survey folks.
Yeah. Starting with what I like to do for our clients that we're helping with these types of things is say, where do you want to be in 5 years? Are you going to double in size? Are you going to stay the same size? Are you going to triple? I don't see how anyone can make any decisions without the greater context of the organization, especially from a technology standpoint. Now, I don't know if that was the CTO, CIO part of me, but I don't think any good technology decision can be made without that, right? So understanding the big picture and then mapping out, okay, well, if that's where we got to go, then we need a roadmap. Now, it doesn't have to be super complicated. It might just be like, well, it makes sense to do this thing first and then the next thing. So then you kind of get that roadmap figured out. What is the right order that things need to happen in to make it easier and less expensive? And then you break it down even further and say, well, what's the smallest first step? Typically, the highest ROI project is going to be the first one, the one with the biggest bang for the buck. And then you typically go down in value from there. And then taking that and saying, how can we just test this thing? How can we make sure that what we're going to implement is going to work? And so finding a small group to then start with. And so instead of rolling it out to 2,000 employees day one, maybe it's, hey, we're going to try it on this one project of 5 people. We're going to learn our lessons. We're going to change it. All right, now let's take it to 2 projects. I mean, that's not the most glamorous thing. That's not what a lot of executives want. They want the easy button. They want something that's going to get rolled out immediately and it's going to be done. But what we've seen is doing it that way is you're going to probably end up in the same place. You're going to get systems implemented. They're going to work, but you're going to do it without damaging the culture as much. You're going to do it. It's going to be easier. You're going to learn lessons when they're not as risky and expensive. And it really begins to build a culture of innovation is what we've seen is when teams are listened to, responded with, and things change with their input, you create an environment where this stuff starts going faster.
Okay, so you start by getting into the field and asking the end users. And you don't have to necessarily be in the field. You could be talking to your project managers. You could be talking to your accounting, but you're talking to the end users, the people who are dealing with the issues. You're doing the stop, start, keep. When an issue arises, you're taking a deeper dive using something like the 5 whys, and you're framing it in terms of your strategic approach, where you want to be in 5 years from now. When I think of technology adoption, I think of dominoes many times. If I do this, then this will happen, et cetera, et cetera. And you were talking about the highest ROI. Is the highest ROI always the first domino? Or what if it's like the 4th domino, but I need to do other stuff first before I get to the highest ROI? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, it does. It really depends on the client. And I think that's another misconception is that technology just needs to be this giant bucket of wasteful spending. We have clients that will say, we're not doing anything that doesn't pay for itself in 12 months. And having some of those, I call them innovative principles, these innovation principles for an organization. An example might be, hey, it's got to pay for itself in 12 months is one principle we see that's often implemented. And then another one might be, we've seen some firms do this, and they've had great success by saying, we're not going to do anything that doesn't improve the life of the field employee. So we've got a client that has those 2 as principles. And I mean, that changes everything. The amount of stuff that gets wiped off people's plates as not necessities, when you have principles like that, amazing. They're not going to do anything that doesn't improve the field employee. So a project comes up, hey, executive, we want to do this thing. Well, how's it help the field?
Why is it that they have that focus on the field?
It's their focus and their culture is about that employee engagement. The employee is the center point. They're the face of the company. They want to make their lives easier. They do that for all sorts of reasons, right? Employee retention, customer satisfaction, every other reason in the world, right? So having some of those principles helps them just cut through the noise, and they focus on stuff that makes sense. And the field teams love it. Employees love it. Their lives are getting easier through the technology that's getting implemented. And that's not hard to do when you have principles like that.
What I think of is that, as a construction company, that my money is made in the field. If I don't do what I'm supposed to do in the field, then I either don't make money or I lose money. Now, I want to go back to this 12 months thing, because I can just picture what happens, right? You get the enterprise solution coming in with this 3-4 year timeline, and you've got a bunch of money dumped in, and salespeople are saying, well, that's just the way it goes, because, this is what's got to happen in order for us to get this implemented. But this 12-month time frame, why 12 months?
For that client, it's 12 months. We've got other clients with longer ROIs. We bring up business. It's in our name. We're a business-focused software firm. So it's important for us to understand how the business operates. And for that one client, that's their thing, 12 months. I don't know how the ownership structure there came up with that, but that was theirs. And they're all about productivity. So they're saying, hey, if I can save every field employee an hour, 1 hour times 500, here's what my average rate is. You keep finding us more efficiencies, and they're making the lives easier for those team members. So yeah, I don't know where they come up with it, but we can get super technical with finance and the weighted average cost of capital and all that. Who knows how they're coming up with it, but that's what they're doing.
I think it's interesting though, because what that does is a constraint, obviously, and then the constraint then would limit the extent of any technology adoption, but that limit would be there with an understanding that we're going to see incremental improvement over time in small areas, like you said, going back to that idea of singles and doubles. What happens when I have, with good intentions, made a technology adoption and it's not working? What are the best things that I should do? If I'm telling myself the truth, my executive team is telling me the truth, the field's telling me the truth, what I've tried is not working.
Well, don't think that you didn't get anything for that. You've learned something, right? In software, we call them retrospectives, right? So you get done with the project and you sit with a client, or maybe it's a milestone, and you do a retrospective, right? What went well? What didn't go well? What could we have done? I think too often we see it from the elders in the construction firm will key into why things happened and the pains, but the new people never got those lessons. And so I think from an organization, understanding why certain things didn't work and making sure that those don't end up in just some person's head that leaves the company one day, but that it gets crystallized and said, no, this is, hey, here's what we learned. And then how do you create a system or process to make sure that checklists are great for this, right? How do you we've seen firms where just the HR team isn't talking to the IT team, and someone's buying a piece of software that isn't going to integrate with something else. And so all they had to do was talk. And so a checklist that says, before you do something, you're going to meet with these department heads, or you're going to meet with the field, right? You're going to make sure it has an ROI. You're going to do the business case. What's the total cost of ownership here? Typically, as you're experiencing some of those challenges, and I don't want to call them failures, but they're not, because you paid money, you learned something. Now make sure you save that in time somehow and make sure you don't do it again and make your company stronger.
What in your mind are the top 3-4 reasons a technology adoption would fail in your experience?
One would be, I'll say, culture, but it's the individuals not understanding the why, right? You've seen it. Oh, the executive team wants us to do this, this, and that. Well, they don't realize the why, right? Something I try to tell my team, right? I've tried to tell our team, we're a software company, but we sell time. That's our business. And so we have to have time entered daily, and it's got to be detailed. And instead of just hammering people for time entry, it's like, no, listen, customers are asking for data every day, and we're trying to schedule resources and give them the why around it. So a lot of times in construction, it's, the back office just wants us to use this new tool. Well, no one sat down with them and explained to them why and how it benefits them and why do we got to do that. So typically the why or the culture is one. Integration is a big one. A lot of times we'll see in the sales process, technology being sold as just not living up to the expectations. When something does integrate or connect to certain different devices or field stuff, it not living up to the expectations that were set during the sales process. So that goes back to another reason, which is talking to the people that are going to use it, getting them involved. It's typically not resources, typically not money. Most people think it's like the money is the holdup, but typically it's not a lack of resources. It's that user-centered approach.
Let me ask you about the integration piece, because you can correct me here if I'm wrong, but following the logic of your approach, let's say I do hit those singles and doubles, but one's maybe in accounting, the other's in the field, one's in project management. They're different pieces of software, perhaps even from different companies. And so that integration issue then comes up. How should a construction company be approaching that integration issue and overcoming that particular challenge?
Yeah, I think it's understanding that 5-year plan, because sometimes we see this a lot in construction. Well, it just takes Jim 15 minutes a week to do that. Export, import. Okay, well, maybe you don't need to be integrated. But if you think that in 5 years from now or 3 years from now, you're going to be doing 10 times the volume, well, then you do need to really learn about that integration. So going back to that, understanding the larger context and where the organization's going is a big deal, because typically scale can really change the need for integration. And then I think it's typically really understanding how the business is going to use that integration. Construction is one of the most unique industries, right? Almost every project is different and every company does things different.
It's true, dude.
Oh my gosh. We work with firms in the same regions,
Yeah.
competing firms, and we've built systems for each. Couldn't use each other's systems because of this one calls it people, customers. This one calls it clients. This one calls jobs. This one calls it projects. This one uses milestones. And so a lot of times technology companies say, oh yeah, no, we have that integration, no problem. But you need to understand how that business actually operates and does it integrate the way they need it to integrate. So what I tell firms is put your eyeballs on it, make them show it to you, make sure your use case and your workflow, the way that you do business will be supported versus just taking their word for it and saying, oh yeah, it says it integrates.
So I think that's one of the fundamental issues and one of the fundamental reasons why construction companies struggle is because the large enterprise software solutions are coming in with a one size fits all, but that is not construction. It's local, it's unique, and every project is unique. And so, like you said, that's one of the challenges with integration. So based on my strategic plan, let's say I've got a 5-year plan of growth. If I'm doing a technology adoption that is a single, and I know it's going to need to be integrated, I should be really talking to the providers of that solution about the integration ability, so to speak, of that piece. I should really be dialed in on that from the beginning. Otherwise, I'm going to come across some failure when the growth occurs. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, really understanding that is key.
Yeah. So then let's say I'm a president, CEO, I'm in my 50s, 60s. Let's say I'm a Gen Xer or a baby boomer. So I was born without the internet. But no, I'm relatively comfortable with it. I'm relatively comfortable with technology. But at the end of the day, you know what I want to be doing is I want to be getting belly to belly with my customers, selling work, maybe developing my people. Technology is not my gig. I know I need it, but it's still kind of a black box for me. How involved do I need to be in the whole process that you've been describing so far?
Regardless of your age or technology background, you should be able to go to the field, the people that are out there with the customers and say, how's that new tool working? Is it making your life easier? What could be improved? I think the individuals that have those guiding principles around innovation and technology, how it needs to be used and deployed in the organization at a high level, you don't have to get much more technical than that. And then just talking to the end users, walking around. You don't have to be you don't need to know how Procore works or how this integration over here works. You don't need to know any of that. You need to be able to walk up to your accounting team. Hey, how's it going? Oh, I'm sitting here for 8 hours a day processing invoices. Well, why is that? Well, this thing doesn't connect to that. You don't need to be a technology expert to just go around and ask people how things are going.
Right. I appreciate that. Okay. So I want to get started with this process. I know that there's opportunities for leverage that I'm not taking advantage of. Perhaps I do have an idea of where I want to be in a few years' time. What are 2 or 3 action items the president or the CEO of a construction company should take in order to begin this journey or perhaps restart the journey of looking into technologies that could help the business?
Yeah. So if you already have that 5-year plan or whatever time frame you want, next would be the metrics that you want to track. A lot of times those are left out. And so you don't have success defined for the team you put in charge of it. Very stressful for the team.
Tell me what you mean by that, then just a little more on the metrics there.
So a lot of times, you'll have executives in construction say, we need to replace our accounting system. or, oh, we need to adopt blank, or we need to improve this. Then you put a team together, right? And you should have a multifaceted team of individuals in charge of helping this initiative. But without a metric that says, hey, I want productivity per person to increase by this much, or having some type of success metric. Because what happens is a lot of times those teams will flounder because the executive or the leadership team hasn't provided what success looks like. So your 5-year plan, what you need to do to get there. And maybe it has something to do with billable time percentage or waste, or what it is, profit per employee, or whatever the metric is. Then you put the team in charge and say, okay, hey team, here's what we're trying to do. Here's what success looks like. And maybe it's a few different things. Maybe it's a metric. Maybe it's a customer, maybe it's an employee satisfaction survey. Maybe there's a few different things in there, right? So there's your success. And then you get that team that is a diverse group of individuals, young, old, field, office, tech savvy, non-tech savvy. We want the least tech savvy people in those meetings too, right? We want the people that walk by a computer screen and it gets all staticky, like everything breaks whenever they touch it. We want those people involved in those teams, right? The ones that'll tell you every reason why something won't work. You typically most people will avoid those types of individuals when rolling out technology. No, get them involved from day one, make them part of the solution. Because when this thing rolls out, they're going to be a cheerleader because they can't speak negatively about something they were involved in, right? So then you get that group together and then tell them singles and doubles. There's the framework.
That's great. So then you would task the team with those conversations with the end users, with surfacing those issues that might be able to be addressed.
Yep. And you see how I didn't mention any solution.
Yeah.
Nothing. No technology should be talked about yet. Because you might get that group together and they find out that it's a behavior thing, it's accountability thing, or it's a process thing. So you don't start with I want to replace the back office accounting system. You would say, hey, our productivity, our office staff we have too many, whatever, team members per field members, or whatever your thing is, right? And figure it out then. And then technology may be a solution, but you don't start there.
Okay. So you begin with your plan. You identify those metrics, you put together that diverse team, and then you task them with finding out the issues that may be addressed by technology, but you may find out that they're not addressed by technology. That's excellent. We're talking a lot about finding specific issues. Tell me a little bit more about what your company does in terms of working with construction companies.
Yeah, so we are a custom software and design company. And we were spun out of a construction firm. So I had a software company. One of my customers was a construction firm. They saw what we were doing and said, oh my gosh, this industry needs this. And that was 5 years ago. And so we've grown to almost 50 team members. And what we do is we help construction firms become more efficient, more productive, and more profitable. And what we do is build custom tools that will interface with their big systems that help them become more efficient. So we don't build accounting systems and we don't build Procores of the world. What we do is we embed ourselves with a company, several year engagement to produce positive ROI returns, right? We want to pay for ourselves through efficiency gains and growth. And we will help streamline all the stuff that goes on around those big systems in an organization. So maybe it's a field mobile app to help team members in the field. Maybe it's a scheduling tool that interfaces with all their other systems, material management. Maybe it's a GIS tool. It all depends on the needs of the customer. So we don't go in there trying to pitch a certain technology. We go in there, understand about their business, what they're trying to achieve, and then we help them get there.
With that in mind, who's your ideal client?
Yeah, our ideal client are privately owned, small, medium-sized construction firms, and maybe some of the private equity owned firms that are maybe just acquired and are now pressured into some massive growth. Typically, our clients are over 100 employees. Sometimes they're smaller than that, but some maybe have a few IT people. Maybe they don't have a CIO yet. And so we kind of call it that messy middle. They're too small to be big. So they don't have these huge resources and huge development teams, but they're too big to be small and just use the tools that are off the shelf. We call it the messy middle. And there's a lot of efficiency to gain there. And they're typically growing. And, the systems that got them where they're at today, aren't going to get them to the next stage. And so they're kind of looking for that opportunity.
Do you guys position yourself as somewhat of an outsourced CTO department, or am I hearing that right? Or
yeah, sometimes we'll play that role. A lot of times we'll partner with certain groups that do that, and then we execute the effort for them. So there's typically a strategic play. Sometimes the executive team already can make those decisions and see that. Sometimes we're playing that role, but it really kind of depends on the client.
Sure. And how can folks get in touch with you, Bob?
Yes, you can find us on the web, sparkbusinessworks.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. So linkedin.com/Bob Armbrister. We share a ton of free content around construction technology. This is our thing. We love it. And yeah, we do a lot of different speaking engagements and trying to share the tactics that a lot of successful companies aren't really out there telling people about this stuff. So we want to help spread that word and give this industry and those people looking for it some opportunity.
It's terrific. And in the show notes, we'll have links to Spark Business Works website and also to your LinkedIn, Bob. Just as we're wrapping up here, then, one final thought. Let's say I'm a construction company CEO. I've just invested a bunch of time and money in a solution and it's not working. Give me one thing I need to do right away.
Understand why it's not working with your own two eyes. Really understanding. Because a lot of times people will say things and you might hear from two people that are the loudest, but getting in there and really understanding what's going on. And you using that approach we talked about earlier, I think is key. And you don't need to have a developer background to just ask a bunch of why questions.
That's great. Bob, I really appreciate your time. I know that there's been some tremendous insights here that are very helpful to people. My big takeaway here is that if you focus on those singles and doubles and talk to your people, you can identify the opportunities for leveraging technology. And it doesn't have to be sort of a write a check and hope for the best kind of thing.
Absolutely not. You're right. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us here today on Construction Genius.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's Construction Genius interview with Bob Armbrister. Make sure to check out Spark Business Works for all the stuff that they do. And feel free to give us a rating or a review wherever you get your podcasts. The more you do that, the more we spread across the interwebs. We're 160 plus episodes in to Construction Genius. I'm committed to doing at least 500 episodes. So we're just going to keep going at this thing. Also, do you have folks who have recently been promoted into leadership roles and they're struggling to make the shift from being, let's say, a project manager to being a project executive? Those things are different functions. They're different responsibilities, and moving into building teams and people as opposed to building projects can be a deep challenge. That is one of the challenges I help my clients address. And if you'd like to chat with me about how I can help your company and your leaders make that shift from building projects to building people, reach out to me on my website, constructiongenius.com/contact. Put your details into the contact page. Let's jump on the phone for 10 minutes to figure out if or how I may be able to help your company. Thanks again for listening to Construction Genius today, and I'll catch you on the next episode.